right, welcome to True Blu Talks, a video podcast dedicated to safety, emergency preparedness, situational awareness. This is our very first episode. It's my first time podcasting, so we're gonna see how we do this here today. First and foremost, I want to say Happy Founders Day to Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. That was on Friday, so gotta pull out that Sigma Blue Phi to all the people out there. So my name is Diogenes Ayala, and I'm joined with my co-host Paula Bell. How you doing today, Paula?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? Zeta's coming up here on Friday, so the
Yeah,
Zeta's
it's
Founders Day is coming up here real soon.
just a Blue Friday for everybody here, at least for
Yeah,
us, at least. So
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm really excited to talk about this episode, which will be called "Sanctuary and States: The Security Risks at the Crossroads of Faith and Politics." So. Before we jump into our topic for this month, please know that some of our topics may be triggering. Please feel free to make space for yourself. Please interact with us during the chat. We would love to hear your comments, and if you have questions, post them in the chat as we may be able to answer them. Also, make sure to subscribe to True Blue Talks on YouTube and follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to get notifications when we go live. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Paula, who do we have joining us today?
Well, we have a special guest who is I consider a brother to me. I've known this gentleman for a very long time. He's an amazing person, an amazing pastor, an amazing bishop. We have joining us today is Bishop Ron Woods. Hi, Ron.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? Thank y'all for having me.
Good, good, good. So, Dio, I'm going to ask you a question really quick because people may not know your background, so may not know your expertise, and may not know why you are passionate about situational awareness, emergency preparedness, all of this goodness. Why do you do what you do? And why is this so important, especially in the time we're in right now?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I have a pretty vast background in disaster recovery, emergency preparedness, homeland security, especially when it comes to terrorism. You know, either counterterrorism, terrorism in general, the logic and reasoning behind why people do what they do. I think it's really important now because we're seeing a very big landscape across the world, right? Not just here in America, but across the world, where we're seeing a lot of nationalist rhetoric and destructive behaviors due to that rhetoric. So, I do this work in order to have these conversations and really kind of get the educational side and the background of why we see what we're seeing today, and then how can we prevent things like attacks and mitigate threats where we can, not just in our where we work, but in our homeland, in our homes, right, in our churches, our schools, activities that we don't really think much about, but are actually soft targets for terrorists. So that's why I do what I do.
Okay. So this question is for both of you all. And I'm going to jump in here too. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm hosting the thing or anything like that. I'll jump in here at some point, right? But when you hear the intersection of faith, politics, and national security, what comes to mind first? I will tell you what comes to mind first for me is I believe a lot of people want to avoid these topics together. They don't want to talk about them. They don't want to talk about faith. They don't want to talk about politics because they don't want to get into arguments. And I don't think people think that faith and politics have such a massive impact on national security. So when you hear that, what comes to mind first? And Ron, I'd be interested to hear what when you hear that, what do you think of being a pastor? And then of course, Dio, definitely want to hear your expertise.
Well, in my two things, moral tension comes to mind. Faith asks what is righteous, politics asks what is adventurous or advantageous. Um, the prophetic versus the partisan, the church's job to be prophetic and not really choose a side other than what is morally or spiritually right. I think a lot of people in this Western culture really have a misunderstanding of true biblical culture. The Bible is not a spiritual book, but it is more a political book. Jesus was a reformer. He was a radical reformer um, in a time where Rome uh, had power over Israel. Israel was captive to Rome. And even around the birth of Christ, we talk about, we just come out of Advent. And now last week would be around the time they talked about where the wise men went and they met with Herod, and he said, "Well, let me know where he is so I can worship him." So a lot of people, especially Christians, westernized Christians, really don't understand that we have a seat at the table. And we have a responsibility to speak truth to power, and that it won't always be the prettiest conversation, but it is necessary.
What do you think about that, Diogenes?
I think that's a pretty very eloquent answer. I don't know if I can answer as eloquently, right? But I would say, just from a national security perspective, using religion as a weapon is something that has become a problem, right? So I think about Machiavelli, the Prince of Machiavelli, right? That's what he wrote to the Prince of Italy, basically saying here, if in order for you to get some people to comply, you have to use a religion or God to be a punishment. If you don't do this, then this happens. And I think we're seeing that a lot more now with within our government structure, right? That faith is important, and we need to have faith, but also the politics side is really kind of perverting what's really is not what the Bible teaches us what to do, right? And then from a national security perspective, I think when we have situations where we're just using religion to force everything down, we are forgetting about other religions in the world, right? That are out there, right? So it's not just about Christianity. There's, Islamic faith, Judaism, and so many other things that are out there. And when we just say only one is good, then that's where we cause a lot of problems across the board. So I think that's how to answer that question.
Yeah. If I may jump in on that, I believe that we are seeing a lot of sensationalism, uh, especially with our current administration. Not to go any further into that, but um, as my brother just said so eloquently, he did say it very eloquently, that if we are people of Jesus, then we are people who are not just people who are tolerant of other faiths, but we are embracing and understanding of other faiths. And I think, especially from the perspective of the Black church was created. I was telling my sister the other day, because everybody know what's going on in the news with my brother Pastor Jamal Bryant, regarding his wife and the dress and her freedom of expression, and how a lot of Christians, particularly of the African American persuasion, had a problem with her expressing her beauty and elegance gracefully at a function from a dress that we deemed to be unacceptable from a biblical perspective. But there was nothing showing on her body. And secondly, it was her body. And if her and her husband felt comfortable enough for the wear the dress, it should not have turned into a conversation that the church had. But because, as I was stating to my sister, some other people, the creation of the Black church, um, and how the Black church was created as a tool of suppression. You talk about Machiavelli, you talk about Constantine, you talk about all these other things, but you think about slavery and how we were kept away from our religious freedom, that we were told was catered to the Caucasian persuasion, which can't be true, because the oldest Bible is the Ethiopian Bible. And we're brought over here and then retaught a religious concept and construct that we knew, but from a place of indoctrination, to teach the slave how to remain loyal to the white slave master. And so uh, I think they do have a place where they interject, and we must be conscious enough to speak truth to power, so that our people aren't just blind Christians, but they are informed Christians that are Christians, and they are embracing of others that are not Christians.
How do you feel we get them informed? Because you said they are informed Christians, right? How do we do that? How do we get people informed to know how to navigate their faith, their political beliefs? And of course, we are going to get to national security as well. How do we do that?
Um, we have to address um, engagement versus entanglement, advocacy versus partisanship. Um, we have to make sure that what we're starting to really find out is pure leadership does not really exist as much as it should in the Christian faith. Um, a lot of people are handlers. And so, where they should be speaking a bipartisan language, a language that is open to all, I didn't see, and I just, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but when you think about the miracle of the 5,000 that were fed, it didn't say 5,000 Christians. It said Jesus fed 5,000. So he wasn't concerned about their religious belief. He was concerned about the fact that they were hungry. And so we need to find a way to join the conversation from a place of advocacy and a place of in place of engagement rather, and not a place of partisanship and entanglement as we're seeing in the current time we live in.
Mm-hmm. And Diogenes, what would you say are the security implications when political leaders are using this faith-based language or symbolism to rally support around whatever they want to rally support around, whatever direction they want people to go to?
Well, I think the symbolism is pretty troubling. So, if you think about January 6th, you think it either as the a walk-in through the Capitol or the insurrection, it's for our listeners to figure out what they believe in. But there are a lot of flags that said like Jesus wants this right to happen, and also I think a lot about like memes or just pictures of like a muscular Jesus with Jesus carrying a weapon or Jesus doing certain things that we don't see in the Bible. So I think that again, by using this caricature, right, of the Bible, a caricature of religion, it's easy to say this is what is expected. And we're not as informed as we should be these days. I mean, we get really caught up in social media and these other things, and because of that, it's easy to see an article or see something that says, "Hey, Kings," the No Kings rally is a good example of that, right? Some people spun the New Kings rally saying that they don't believe in Jesus or God. Really, it wasn't nothing to do with that. It had to do with the fact that we have no kings in America, right? Very controversial subject, but depending on if you were really informed, is what you kind of believed in, right? So really, it's political narratives that spin things around that make people confused, right? And just say, "This is trust me, I know what I'm talking about," and that kind of narrative. And it's not us saying, "I'll hear what you're saying, but let me try to discern what actually is the truth." And that's a big part of why we're kind of seeing these political one-offs where we're looking at the Bible and or religion, and any religion, right, as either the weapon or the treat, depending on what that particular person wants you to do.
So, what misunderstandings do you feel people often have about the relationship between religion and radicalization?
I think the biggest misunderstanding is that you can believe in whatever you believe in. The misunderstanding is that only one particular religion is dominant, right? So let's just get off. Let's just not talk about Christianity, for example. Let's talk about the other many religions that are out there, right? Everyone has pride in what they believe in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to believe in what you believe, and that's what the Crusades happened, right? That's how these things of mass communication that sometimes is not the truthful communication. So being uneducated and not understanding what's going on is a particular issue. And I'll go back to this 9/11, right? 9/11, you think about the Islamic faith, right? Everyone kind of tied Islam with terrorists. Well, that's not true, right? Islamic faith is not about that. It's about peace. But in every religion is a radical person that can do harm or damage, right? And sometimes we get really caught up on that one particular individual and but doing that, and we got to discern where there actually is trouble and when there's not trouble.
Any comments around that from you?
Yeah, I think that I completely agree. Uh, I mean, eloquently spoken, because 9/11 happened. I was in my early 20s. I was, I think, fresh 21, 22 when that took place. Wow. And coming up as a Christian and already knowing that there was a difference, coming up in a metropolis like Chicago,
Mhm.
and uh, seeing the Nation of Islam, which is the Black Muslim, versus not being exposed to what the Islamic faith was, and how, for the sake of holding the Black man in church, we were taught that the Nation of Islam, these Muslims, they all come out of jail, they all speak the same thing, they sell the final call, but they're preaching a false doctrine and it's full of hate, and that's why they wear the bow ties. So when 9/11 happens, from my particular purview, I'm connecting 9/11 to the Nation of Islam. Do you get what I'm saying? And not understand that there's a whole nother faith. And it was a few years later, after living in Iowa, that I got exposed to the teachings of the Shabbazes, of Malcolm X, and several others, and being exposed to what Mecca was really about, and being a part of several initiatives where I had to work side by side with brothers who are currently good friends of mine, Muslims and Jews, that I begin to understand the difference. I think that one of the main problems people have is um, they assume religion itself is what divides and polarizes the nation, but religion at its core seeks meaning, morality, community, and compassion. um, Weaponization of religion, however, seeks power, control, and political leverage. And so while religion says, how do we live faithfully uh, in connection with our God and our brothers, while holding true the core foundations of our belief, weaponized religion says, how do I win? And how do I use what I believe to make everybody else lose or come under me? So that now the win is I won and you won because you believe what I believe, how I believe it. This is one of the major dangers. And again, I know this is not set against, and like I said, we have brothers and sisters that are watching that are supporters of President Trump. And then we have the truth, that a lot of our African American brothers and sisters voted for him because they were not ready for an educated, powerful leader that happened to be a woman. And so then we have that truth that exists. And so the greater of the two evils was, oh, she's a woman, so we're going to vote for him. And now we're dealing with uh, a nation that is having to readdress what faith really is, because you have the evangelical uh, steamrolling of faith around the nation, now into Venezuela, taking the president of Venezuela, now messing with Iran and other nations and using God. Now, here and again, no soapbox, but it's a point of contention for me watching social media the other day and hearing a guy say that he was prophesying and that God said that our president was supposed to go to Venezuela because the man was a crook. Now, our president was not only impeached, but he was, how many counts? Do you get what I'm saying? Was he convicted of? And so, but God, white Jesus, said to go get the president of Venezuela because America has the oil. Yeah, okay. And it's not the oil of God. And so now we have this critical place that we're in that is causing us to have to rethink how we communicate faith. Because have we, even those who see ourselves as liberators in the faith, have we been weaponizing faith? When you think about my brothers and sisters from the LGBTQIA community, do they feel safe when they come to churches? Or do they feel as if the church itself has targeted them as terrorists of Christianity. And so, you know, I'm gonna stop, but I could go further. So yeah.
So you actually gave a great segue as you talked about the divisions and the impact and the actions and the behaviors that not only our community takes, but also the president and other leaders in Congress take, right?
Yes.
So I'd be interested, Dio, from this standpoint, how does this division that Ron just talked about, how does this division impact emergency preparedness, response, and communication? Because that is your expertise and your life's work.
Yeah, I think it affects. I mean, I know it affects the preparedness and just overall mitigation strategies because if you don't believe in a certain thing, then therefore you are going to be left behind, right? So not to get super political, right? But you have to agree with what I agree with in order for me to understand or give you what you need, and that's very, very troubling, especially again if you have a different faith, a different belief in faith, right? So you go back to Islam, you go back to Judaism, right? I may not believe everything you believe in, so I have to then either have to change the way my thoughts are or say what you want to hear in order for me to get something, and that's not how it's supposed to work. When you here in general, like everyone should be treated the same, right? That's the what the doctrine as it's supposed to be. Now we know that sometimes that's not the truth, right? Or there's some things that happen along the way. But I think that one of the problems that we're seeing again is that depending on the whim of a certain individual, that's when you see things that are either delivered or not delivered. And that's dangerous across the board for all communities because you think about New Orleans, think about what happened down there with the levee system, right? Levee's nothing more than a dirt and hill. It's not some super duper thing. And if we don't continue to repair those things in poor neighborhoods, then we're going to see a lot more tragedy in itself. But you should not have to obey a certain way in order to get the basic needs that your tax dollars are asking you to provide. So that's
So
it.
that's away from a faith perspective. And I would also say, based on what you just said, as far as believing a certain way, faith based, but also believing a certain way from the standpoint of your political affiliation, that shouldn't impact it either. At the end of the day, it should be about community and helping all, and we should all be able to live and to thrive and to have all the resources and things that we need. But because certain people have certain more power and influence and access, we're seeing that's not the case, right? So, where does the line exist between respecting belief and addressing potential security threats?
I think they meet in a certain way because again, if you think about beliefs, in order to protect the country, you should have some belief in believing in the country to succeed, right? I shouldn't have to worry about what your political ideology.
And it was getting so good too. And he
Yeah.
just left.
Yes.
He just left.
He'll be back.
He'll be
But he
back.
was really,
He
he
was
was
rolling.
nailing
He
it.
was
Yeah.
cooking. He
He
was
was nailing
cooking.
it.
He was
Yeah.
cooking. So as we wait for him to come back, I'm going to ask you the same question in a different sort of way. Ron, what role should faith leaders play in supporting community safety and unity, do you feel? Now, one thing we didn't do is we didn't give you a chance to actually tell us who you were. And so we jumped right in. So, how about you tell the people who you are as we wait for our host to come back, where you're from, how you grew up, and then we can go right into that question because that I do believe your background might actually influence and your lived experiences might influence how you answer this question. So, why don't we just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was happy that you didn't ask me to do that because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody. But
Oh wow. Say that again. You gotta say
I'm
that one
just
slower.
I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, one thing that I'm appreciative to God for allowing me to be able to experience is the school of hard knocks in ministry. Coming up in Chicago, God saw fit to send me to Iowa
Mm,
to cut my teeth in pastoral ministry.
okay.
And so I was forced to cross a few streets that I had never ever had to address. The first one was race. uh South side of Chicago is like a little country within itself. You really don't have to go anywhere outside of the South side
Hmm.
to live and exist. And in church culture, you become famous by how well you do what you do and how much you are connected to who does what you do better than you.
Hmm.
And so having to go to Iowa, a lot of that didn't work for me no more, you know. And then I had to experience a relationship with Jesus Christ that expanded not only my theological lens, but the lens of my humanity. And so he's back though. And I know I don't want, his thought was so powerful. So if you don't, I want to pause because he was really nailing in something.
I
And
apologize. I
yeah,
don't know what
yeah,
happened. It's
you,
just like
it
apparently,
was
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
something. Yeah, and I forgot. I apologize, Paul. I forgot the question because
I
it,
can
it
ask the
just
question
completely
again. It's
glitched out on me. I apologize. I'm sorry.
it's no problem. Where does the line exist between respecting belief and addressing potential security threats?
Okay, so back to never mind now. So belief. So it doesn't necessarily. You don't need to have a belief. The only belief you should have is protecting the country, right? It should not matter what you believe in. I was in the military. There are plenty of people that had different beliefs than I did, but we had one nation that we were fighting for. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of politicalization about that. Like if you have to be in a certain peg in order to get into the hole, and that's not how it should be. So I shouldn't have to know about your personal life, your personal beliefs, right? Or if you have personal beliefs, so be it. But it shouldn't dictate how we protect our country. It shouldn't dictate how we do intelligence gathering, dictate how I get that information. Because right now we're seeing a lot of that kind of disappear, and because of that disappearance, we're having holes in our intelligence infrastructure, and that's really important to fix. Because if we don't have those things in place, they are susceptible to attacks. So, belief wise, I don't, again, you shouldn't be, I shouldn't, it shouldn't matter what you believe in. It should be a matter of what we can do to help our country succeed. So,
So, can you go a little bit deeper? You talked about we have some gaps, we have some holes. Can you give an example for those who, I don't want to assume that everybody who's either watching us live or who will listen to this recording later actually knows everything that's going on in the world. Some people do truly live in a bubble where they are not keeping up. So when you say those sort of like security gaps that are leaving us open, where we could be internally vulnerable, can you give an example of what one of those might be?
yeah. So, I mean, the fact that in the military, there are people who have been removed because of their, transgendered service members have been removed. People that don't agree with exactly the turn of where the military is going are being asked to go. That's years of knowledge, right? That's years of knowledge that we cannot replace. That years of knowledge, people that may know a different language that translate, and because of that translation or the lack of knowledge, that puts us in a bad position because we have to find someone else that can do that kind of work, right? So, don't ask, don't tell was gotten rid of because of that idea, right? We're losing people that are training in order to be successful. So that's what I mean when I say there's gaps, right? We're seeing people that are being removed, but again, it's not just here in America, it's across the world, right? We're seeing the same kind of movements happening all over the place. And when we see that, we see people that are not being represented. The military has completely kind of turned over from what it was in, the end of 2023 or 24, beginning of 24, right? It's a completely different military kind of mindset and structure, and that in itself leads us to be put in bad positions. So what I look at is, hopefully once this year, as we this year kicks on, we talk about different conflicts, that we can see more um, military reasoning and why we're doing things that we're doing, because a lot of people don't really understand why we're doing the things that we're doing, and that in itself causes a lot of discontent and just discomfort, because like we talked about Venezuela. There's a lot of different things that are happening, but there really is no explanation of why they're happening, and we need more information to get a better decision or understanding on where we're going as a country, right? Where we're going around the world. America is a very influential piece of the pie here. We don't Sometimes we don't think about that, right? But UN, NATO, a lot of it is U.S. based, U.S. pushed. We talk about U.S. aid going away. That's huge. I mean, a lot of people have died because U.S. aid has gone away. But also from a national security perspective, other countries have come in and taken over where we were there at one time, right? So we have our China, Russia, other countries that we deal with uh, in a conflictual relationship. They're now in the places that we left, right? So from a national security perspective, that's huge because it's going to take a long time for us to get that relationship back with that country that we just said, hey, we're not going to provide aid to you anymore. You do it on your own, and someone else comes and say, hey, we're going to take care of it for you. That stuff is immeasurable, and it's hard to overcome.
Mm. So, Ron, what role do you feel, as you are a very prominent and well-known faith leader, what role do you feel faith leaders should play in supporting community safety and unity, as you hear what Diogenes just said?
Yeah, I got to piggyback on something he said earlier, and I think that you can only speak from the lens that you're birthed. You get what I'm saying? So, from my lens as an African American man, when I think about one nation under God and how that never did serve our African American military men well, not consistently, not equitably. It didn't translate effectively. It did not support Black soldiers. After the war, when you think about the institutional racism within the military, as you were saying, people being removed who have specialized knowledge and intelligence, it happened because of color. Now it's happening because of sexual preference, sexual orientation, sexual preference, and color. You think about the GI Bill, and it wasn't equally accessible. You think about, I think it was called the Red Summer of 1919, where riots broke out because the U.S. Did not really help Black veterans reintegrate into civilian life. And so you think about that, and then you, like he said as well, countries that we left, um, other countries that are rivals have gone in and said, "Okay, we got you back." You know what I mean? And then you have on the other side people saying, "Well, to hell with America, the United States of America." And my question is, don't you live here too? So if America's wiped off of the map, where are you gonna go? I'm gonna go to Ghana. You think so? Okay. All right. And so when you go to other countries and you see how a lot of these countries are being Americanized, just in Cabo for Christmas with my daughter, and we stayed on a nice resort, and I'll never forget, nobody spoke English, and it became kind of a place of tension because I'm trying to explain, what it is I'm asking for. And it wasn't until we went to the pier and went to the pier looked like California because all of the stores were from America. You get what I'm saying? And that was the highlight of the trip, going to a place that was familiar that had been Americanized. The church has a responsibility to inform its communities, but educate. We must follow what Micah chapter number 6 says. Not to bring Bible too much into it, but we have to follow Micah chapter number 6. We got to really think about, does God really accept righteousness, a righteous performance over justice? You get what I'm saying? Does he really embrace and support leaders who abuse religion for power? Um, when his word says he requires justice, mercy, and humility, and that we walk in oneness with our God. And so, is political dominance really the way of God? And that is now, Paula, now, Dio, a new conversation that we have to address because um, the construct of political dominance in the nation is now denominational dominance in the church. Do you get what I'm saying? So, in order for us to really engage this conversation, is it Christ for some or is it Christ for all? Is it grace for some? Is it grace for all? And do other religions have something to bring to the table? Or is Jesus Christ really the absolute only way and everybody else obsolete? So Those are the questions that we have to begin to engage from our pulpits, and they're dangerous because the systems that control the church control the voice of the Bible.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's powerful.
I mean, like that was a lot said. I mean, so let me ask you a question, Ron, since you are over a church. I also have been to your church, right? So I rock with you, and I know how you speak, and you are not one who shy away from having crucial conversations or difficult conversations, no matter what platform you're on. How do you weave this into how you lead your church?
You know, one of the main things I've been doing, and I've been doing it for 12 months, and I'm telling you, and I'll openly say this because some of the stuff you can find on social media, it caused a split in my church when I begin to tell people decolonize your faith. So when I begin to teach the decolonization of faith and really looking at the Bible for what it really is, and starting to study the Bible, not just from the lens or from the language of westernized American culture, but in the actual language by which it was written, it caused four former board members to go behind my back and try to have me expelled from the church. So, it's not an easy fight, but we prevailed because the people rallied around me and they said, no, he's right. He hasn't been teaching anything false. We support him because we really want to know the Bible for ourselves. That's one of the things that we have to do. We have to engage the conversation of study. Most churches have a midweek Bible class, but here's the crazy thing about it, or it's devastating to even speak of right now. But that midweek Bible class is just a mini Sunday service. It's really not a Bible class. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There's really no requirement for homework, personal study, personal development. You're still eating from the hands of the preacher. We have to readdress that narrative. I am a man of God, but I am a man of God. And so now we have to readdress that. I'm not the God of man. And so you have to study to show yourself approved. You have to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. You hear me using a lot, and I'm just only speaking from the lens of a Christian. And I say that openly to whoever may be watching. Um, you hear me say a lot that you have to have confidence in the relationship that you have with the God that you know. That is not traditional Christian language. Traditional Christian language is you have to have confidence in the relationship you have with the God that I tell you he is. Do you get what I'm saying? But my personal experience reveals a Christ that looks differently and is born through my suffering and his mercy in his grace in the midst of my personal suffering. And then you have to be open enough to explore and expand upon your faith because the Bible is filled with a lot of core values and principles that come from other religions. And so you can't look at somebody and say, oh, you're going to hell. Well, first of all, where'd you get that from? And then who gave you the authority to tell me I'm going to hell? And that's what's wrong with America. America is saying everybody that does not agree with America is hellbound. If we were using it from a pulpit perspective, do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And the evangelical church has backed it, has supported it. If I may rewind just a minute, um, I watched the inauguration. I was invited to be there. I did not attend, but I watched it, and I felt a responsibility to watch it as a citizen of the United States and a faith leader that has a voice and people that follow across the world. And so I needed to watch it. I needed to see what it was really about and to hear the indoctrination of how America's faith is really constructed. If you watch that, it was Jesus and nobody else. And what Jesus? And we can get into that at a later date. It wasn't a Jesus that looks like me, it wasn't a Jesus that looks like you. It was a certain type of Jesus. And it was a narrative that was birthed that day. and the president said something, and Christian leaders from around the country applauded him. He said that America, as of today, is a nation, and I quote, he said, that is male and female. Now, I have a problem with that. I'm a heterosexual man, and I don't preach against the LGBTQIA community. I preach Bible based off my belief and the truth that I have received. But my problem with that is, if this is the United States of America, it is not just Christian people. It is not just heterosexual people. And so if it's really we the people to make a statement that says, now we're a Christian nation, so everybody else is damned, and now we're just male and female, and everybody else is damned. And I'll end with this. I sat in a meeting months after the inauguration with pastors, and they were talking about it, and some of them got mad, and they were beginning to call me a heretic. And I asked them a question. I said, brothers, if by chance a transgender woman joins your church and she brings a man with her and they want to be members of your church and they tell you that they're married, will you allow them to be members? And a lot of the guys in the room said, no. I said, well, here's the caveat. The caveat is, I didn't tell you that the man that you see standing there is actually the woman, and the woman that you see standing there is actually a man. And they've come to the knowledge of the Christian faith and have embraced that they desire biblical marriage and to have the nuclear family, but they cannot afford the reconstruction surgery. Now, how does our faith embrace these people? Because they are yet people. And the room got quiet.
Interesting. Interesting. Did they stop calling you a heretic then?
They just looked at me.
I'll be telling you, Ron, in these controversial conversations, as we talk about controversial conversations, let's talk about social media a little bit, because it was brought up before. How do you both feel that social media has changed the way faith and politics influence each other?
Well, I think social media is huge, right? Again, if you're uneducated, you're going to read everything that you believe everything you read, right? You have like sites like The Onion who kind of parody news, and people believe that and run with it and share the articles. Again, the more misinformed you are, the worse it is, right? Because you're reading what you believe is the truth, and that's not the truth all the time. You know, you can look at different things. I mean, obviously, there's some controversy what happened in Minnesota here with the ICE shooting, right? And I'm not going to get into that here because you can make your own decision. But depending on who you heard or what you listened to is what you believed if you didn't go watch the video yourself, right? So that's a good example of someone telling you what you should be thinking instead of actually going out there and finding that to see on your own with your own two eyes. When it comes to this, it's important again because I can create a meme that seems very funny and hysterical, but in reality is actually pretty deadly, and you're just sharing that meme over and over and over again. And we've seen that on many different occasions. Because again, people don't understand that the origin of that meme. They just find it funny, they share it, and really it has a deadly message. So I think that's a big part of the social media construct because again, it's not traditional media. Anyone can post anything they want to post. And by doing that, it does give this misinformation technique to everyone to believe that what they see is the truth.
What do you feel, Ron?
Well, then just to add to, because that was eloquently spoken, AI and the personalization and algorithms and how social media platforms use AI to decide what users see. The pros are tailored content that aligns with, excuse me, individual interest. But here's the con: filter bubbles, and it deepens polarization in both religion and politics, reinforcing existing beliefs without exposing users to challenges or nuances. And our current administration is literally a poster child for this. He'll say something in a press conference, forget he said it, and go on X and type a whole nother post that is in contradiction with what he said. And so we have that, and it can formulate into manipulation, and it also manipulates the attention span for engagement and not just for truth. People click uh, uh, more, and I forgot what nation it was. I think it was China that tried to make certain things in TikTok illegal because they didn't want their children to be exposed to the foolishness that we see in America. And I believe our president elevated that, how in their nation, the stuff that they're allowed to post over here, they can't post it over there. And so it is, while it helps, it does. It helps the furtherance of ministry. It connects us. We're connected now through social media platforms, and uh, but it also hurts.
Hmm. So, if you all had to give some advice to our communities, right? So, we talked a lot about the things that are happening currently. We talked about the vulnerabilities internally, externally. We talked about politics. We talked about religious beliefs. We talked about all those things. What can communities do to remain grounded, to remain informed, to remain protected in such a polarized environment?
I think again, it's to seek information, right? So there are a lot of resources out there that you can find. I know, like here in Iowa, the NAACP is doing a project on protection, mitigation, um, disaster preparedness, right? So there are a lot of local groups that are out there that are kind of stepping up, where the federal government has kind of decided they're going to take a brief break from. So I think that's important. I think also is just really getting in community, again, churches. Even if you're not a member of a church, right? Find a group that you can have these conversations and these discussions, because the more that we talk about these kind of tough subjects, the better we are as a society. We can't just allow the narrative to always be negative, right? There's a lot of positive things that are out there. So just having those conversations are huge. Not allowing the loudest voice in the room to dictate how you should believe, and that sometimes we have that happen. People are very loud and rambunctious and say certain things, and we just say okay because that's what they believe in. And I think that's one of the things we need to continue to really fight back on is, you know, listen, understand, ask questions. Don't just blindly just sign something or just believe in what you're told to believe in, because that's kind of how dictatorships start.
So, Dio, I just have to say this as you're talking, right? You have this light. Your light
I can
is like
see. I
right
know.
above your head. It's
I
like a
know.
halo right
I don't know if
above
it's a
your head.
Yeah.
halo, but it's something here. It's something.
It's just like a halo.
Yeah.
What would you say, Ron?
Well, I think that one of the main things we need to do in the community is address PPSD. We talk about PTSD, but we don't address PPSD, post-pandemic stress disorder. And I think during the pandemic, we really highlighted what Dio just said about the loudest voice in the room. And not everybody will agree, but sometimes just to get that voice to shut up, we just, okay, you know what? You have it. And so go back to Bible, Micah 6 and 8, to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. We must protect the community's well-being and rights and through not just legal but intentional, relational, civic, and moral engagement. We have to build justice networks and partner. Partnership is not a bad thing. I think he said something about NAACP. And one thing that really became a critical thorn in my flesh in my time in Iowa, I felt, now this is just my personal feeling, I felt that Iowa wasn't big enough to have all of these little sectors of social justice organizations, and none of them intersect somewhere and work together. I thought that that was crazy. And I thought it was divisive to keep the people trying to figure out what side of the street to join in with and never coming to the strength of numbers to see change affected in the communities. Um, We have to become advocates for fair and safe systems that embrace and support all. We have to love mercy. We got to protect people's humanity and their choices and their emotional health. We have to make sure that, listen, I might not agree with you, but because I love you, love is a power of agreement. I love you enough to say I stand with you, even if I don't agree with you. I stand with you. And those are two different yous. You get what I'm saying? So, establish care and support structures. We have to practice conflict healing and not conflict hiding, address powerful conversations, knowing how to resolve conflict, not walking away from the table, tabling it, but walking away from the table with understanding. Or maybe let's not walk away from the table. Let's remain at the table after we get understanding and develop a system that will embrace and help everyone. And then care for the vulnerable. Because right now, our children, it's not nothing. People that watch this will know my son was a victim of gun violence, and children are vulnerable. Um, our elders, our immigrants, to see people of African American, uh, um, um, you black, and you laughing at what ICE is doing, and you don't understand that you practice before you preach. You catch that later. You get what I'm saying? So how can you be laughing at that? Whether you agree with how a lot of the immigrants got here and some not being legal, you should never agree with the tactics used to pull people away from their families and put them in cages. In my city that I pastor in now, Chicago, I pastored, and when you came, we were in a Hispanic community. Church had been in the Hispanic community for 38 years prior to me being elected. And after I became the pastor, we sold that building and we moved more into an African American community. And that's when the thing with ICE began. And I repented to God for moving a church from the Hispanic community more into the African American community, because I said, well, maybe I was set in that community as an African American church to be a guardian for the people that could not speak up for themselves. And so happened several pastors of Hispanic uh, nationality called me. I need your help. I haven't seen my brother. I haven't seen my wife. A wife called me, said my husband went to work. Now, we know for sure they were picked up by ICE. You get what I'm saying? And entire families, a school that we had serviced, and we gave 1,000 toys and a bunch of other stuff too. ICE went into the school and was grabbing workers. And it's like, Lord, I moved out of this community because I thought that I can better service my community as a man of faith. And the minute I move, places my feet and my handprint had touched were affected by things that are going on in this nation. We have to care for the vulnerable. We have to come off our horses, really put on our boots, step in the mud, and do the actual work.
It's hard to follow behind. I mean, compassion is key, right? I mean,
Yes, sir.
compassion and looking out. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The vulnerable and that's what the work that we try to do, right? Is to protect people and make sure they can go home with their families and have a good night. So, and with that, I think I'm going to wrap this up. I think any final thoughts? I mean, I don't know if I could. I don't know. I think we might have hit the mother load here, but any final thoughts, guys?
No, I don't have any. All I'm going to say is, as you said, Diogenes, it's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully, this conversation sparks something in you. So share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Your partner, your friend, your community, your circle, your church. Thanks for engaging and listening. Please continue to keep the conversation going. Subscribe to our channels and turn on notifications to know when we go live. In addition, leave comments, as we would love to hear from you. I'm quite sure you can find Bishop Ron Woods on social. You can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on Facebook. You will only find Diogenes on LinkedIn. He does not do social. You will find me everywhere. So if you need to get in contact with any of us, keep it go to keep the conversation going, let's do that. I will say, Ron and Dio, stay online once we go off, so I can make sure everything goes great. But for everybody else, stay aware, stay prepared, stay protected, and until next time, this is True Blue Talks, and we'll see you next month.
Blue fight.